Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I'm pulling some videos out of the vault. It's a compilation day. This is a compilation of Boomers Being Fools. It's a lot of the past episodes thrown into one to make it easier for viewing, and also it's to kind of help pay for legal fees. Don't forget this channel is brought to you by GamerSupps, and if you use code Oz at checkout, it directly supports me. So now you've got two ways to directly support me. Anyways, hope y'all can enjoy this, and I'll catch y'all later. This one's brought to us by Icaneth. This sub allowed me to say something that stopped my mom dead in her tantrum. Boomer Freakout. So I just had a call with my mom, who started having a tantrum over the phone with me because I had to cancel a trip to see her. I'm used to these, as she will get this way when she was really looking forward to something. I had to cancel, but the trip was still 2 months away, and I was trying to tell her I would come a month or so later. She insists that won't work, but can't give me a reason why and continues with her tantrum. And I just simply retorted, "You see, Mom, this is why you have no grandchildren." "Why?" "Well, it's because I don't want to try to explain to a child that they're not allowed to have a tantrum, but grandma is allowed." The comment stunned her, and 5 seconds later, "Okay, well, let me know when you can come." Total fucking stun lock. I guarantee that the whole excuse of the fact that it wouldn't work beyond a reason that wouldn't be provided was just a lie to try to get exactly what they want, and all it took was them being hit square in the face with honestly a pretty brutal bout of logic for them to actually come to their senses. Good on you, Icaneth. This one's posted by Lock Treasure Hunter. Treasure Hunter, actually. My anti-immigrant boomer father hates being reminded that his grandparents were immigrants. Boomer story. Today I was treated to another rant from my elderly father about how immigrants need to come here the right way, and they shouldn't be here because you needed a job to make it here, and we can't just give them all jobs, and you need to respect the language of the place you go to. I reminded him that all 4 of his grandparents were impoverished Eastern Europeans who crossed the ocean in a boat without paperwork, didn't speak English, 2 of them never learned English and needed my grandparents to translate for them for their entire lives, and sought out jobs in sweatshops where they were probably hated by Americans. "Well, we can't just let everybody in." Yes, Dad, that's exactly what people said about your grandparents. It's exhausting. Once upon a time when it came to immigration, we had the whole "give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses." But as it turns out, that only applied if you were the right type of white. Look back to the Irish need not apply. This country has unfortunately always had a pretty racist outlook on immigration, despite the fact that modern America was quite literally built off the backs of immigrants. It's brought to us by Properly Baked. Boomer throws his entire life and career away because an 8-year-old broke an instrument in his class. This one's labeled as Boomer Freakout. I work in an elementary school. I wasn't there, but as with all things, news spreads fast. This just happened about a week or so ago. Apparently, a student was throwing a tantrum in class. The kid threw a ukulele on the ground, and when the teacher told him, "Better pick it up or else," the kid said, "Or else what?" and stomped his foot right through it. Now, obviously, this is not acceptable behavior and grounds for some kind of serious punishment. However, instead of calling the administrators, a school resource officer, or any type of other backup to help resolve the situation, this boomer-ass teacher just cocked back and full-on punched this 8-year-old child in the face. The other students freaked out and ran out of the class. The kid is on the ground, blood coming from his nose. The teacher still standing over him when the school resource officer arrives and is yelling at the student, "Not so tough now, are you?" Oh boy. So the parents are informed. The father arrives very soon after and is livid, understandably so. He's looking for this teacher and is ready to settle it himself. He, luckily, never does, but is dead set on pressing charges. So the teacher was arrested at home later that evening. This guy should have been forced to retire a while ago. He is nasty to his students. He gets angry with the autistic kids for not responding to him when he'd yell, "Good morning," at them. I remember sitting in his class and hearing him just spout some unhinged shit at his students about TikTok and China and the conspiracy to make all the kids dumb with that app. Just crazy shit. But he refused to take his retirement last year and wanted to come back. Now, He's thrown it all away and ruined his life as a 60-year-old man who is now facing multiple violent charges, fired from his job, and will likely have his pension taken as part of the settlement with the family, as it should be. I have no sympathy in this situation. Yes, the child acted inappropriately, but it's a grown man. And what bothers me is this is just what we hear about. This is just what we're reading about. Who knows what else is out there? Especially if, God forbid, the fact that he has autistic kids in his class. Who knows how he actually treats them beyond just the yelling good morning at them and expecting a response? How come this guy wasn't the one who was scammed? Pepper tea, bringing something that we can all unfortunately relate to in a very frustrating way. Aunt-in-law came to stay unannounced, and she doesn't see how that's disruptive. Boomer story. So this woman just turned up, and unannounced she's trying to stay for the weekend. She made the 9-hour trip, so why are we not thrilled? She didn't really drive 9 hours. She took a 2.5-hour flight. She was so disappointed that the guest room had some boxes and toys in there, not set up like a luxury spa for her arrival. Complained loudly the whole time we rushed to set it up for her. Now, we were planning on some hiking, kayaking, but she hates anything that involves moving, so we had to cancel those. Last night, she got so pissy because we wouldn't take her out for dinner somewhere fancy to celebrate her arrival. Jeez! My God, excuse us for not being ready to spend $300 on a single dinner. God forbid. Now, she also wants to be driven to the mall this morning, cooked for and catered to all day long. It's been 24 hours and we're already sick of her. She's so nasty to my child and tells her off for the most minor things, like leaving her school hat at school or not wanting to wear shoes in the garden, singing out loud. So many snide little comments about the spoiled only child and not being ladylike. She seriously can't wrap her head around why we aren't super grateful for her surprise. Update. After shopping at the mall a town over, my husband casually found a very nice boutique hotel and dropped her off there. Please don't be too harsh. His cultural background doesn't allow much disagreement with elders out of fear of family scorn. And yet he still made the exact proper choice he could make in this situation. And just from another standpoint, this kind of behavior is infuriating on a whole other standpoint. I know that I'm definitely not the only person who has dealt with family members who have this same exact attitude. Why aren't you grateful that we're showing up here? It's one of the parts that really gets under my skin with this is the fact that they had to cancel their plans in order to accommodate this random intrusion on their personal lives. As an example, the worst family member that I have that does this believes that their property is theirs, but your property is theirs. And a great example I have of this, and this is going to reveal a bit of a car person I am, first car that I had, really happy with it. Just spent the weekend washing and waxing it, super excited. Parked out front of my mom's house. This family member showed up. They were unpacking their bags. They put their suitcase on the back of my car and dragged it off, scratching it deeply, and was like, well, you shouldn't have parked there. And it's like, what is wrong with you? Long story short, not a fan of entitled people that show up and believe they should have unlimited access to you and your schedule because they decided on a whim that they should show up. Aesop 414. Boomer has been taking things from people's desks because if it's out, she figured it's for everyone. Boomer story. So there's one boomer that works in our department. She's the secretary, so she comes in at 7 a.m. and everyone else comes in at 7:30. So the other day, she was late. This is a rare occasion. And as soon as she came in, she came to my desk and took one of my K-Cups. She then proceeded to try and use it at my Keurig on my desk. I asked her what she was doing, and she said because it's out, she figured it was for anyone. I said, no. The things I bring in and pay for and leave at my desk are not for everyone. Oh boy. Then, I asked her how long she's been taking my K-Cups. Her response was, well, not every day. And I obviously told her that my things at my desk are off limits. I told some coworkers what had happened, and they all said they would come in and get the feeling that someone had been rifling through their things. So we decided that someone would come in early and sit in the conference room, looking over our desk to see what was going on before we came in. We discovered that she would come in and take things from people's desks. She makes coffee from my machine, makes an oatmeal packet from a box someone leaves their desk, used honey from someone else's desk, and in the meantime, goes desk to desk and goes through people's things. She took post-it notes from one person, a pen from another. Hell, even took one of someone's daily vitamins. Then she ate and drank her coffee and reorganized her desk with other people's things before 7:30, when everyone else gets in. We were obviously shocked, angry, and felt violated. How long had this been going on for? We went to our boss and had a meeting to discuss what we knew was going on. This lady saw no fault in what she did. She kept saying if it's out, then anyone can use it. Why leave it out if you don't want people to touch it? Everyone said they felt violated and didn't think they had to lock up post-its at the end of the night. This boomer just shrugged it off and saw zero problem with what she did. The boss told her to knock it off, but we didn't trust that she wouldn't do it again. Now, everyone locks up everything in their file cabinet at the end of the day. We thought about it and we all thought we were crazy. I would swear I had more K-cups in my box, or I know I brought enough snacks for the week. I swear I had 2 blue pens. After that, we realized all the other liberties she takes with people's things. Using hand lotion without asking, taking candy off someone's desk, using someone's creamer in the fridge. We keep telling her enough is enough, but she really thinks she has the right to these things. The entitlement is unreal. I've never in my life worked with someone that behaves this way. Also, edit. I work for the government so people don't get fired on the spot. Anytime someone does get fired, it's a huge ordeal with multiple write-ups and multiple disciplinary meetings. We also have a union. This one incident certainly isn't enough to get fired, but if it keeps occurring and can be proven, that's a different story. Honestly, the best way to handle this is just wait for her to leave her purse at the desk and hey, your wallet's on your desk. That's for everyone, right? Oh, look at that, your car key's on the desk. Can I go take that and drive around for a bit? I mean, surely by your keys being on your desk and your own admission of logic, that means it's my car now, right? I can borrow this. It's for everyone. I think the most telling part of this, by the way, is the fact that she goes out of her way to clean up her desk before everyone else arrives. She knows it's wrong, or at least has a semblance of realization that what she's doing isn't correct. Posted by Seiji Green. Boomer parents insulted by my comment after they told me they plan to spend everything before they die. Boomer story. My parents retired about 20 years ago, and since then they have embraced cruise life and spent a ton of money each year to mostly sit on a ship and pretend they're well traveled. They had to sit out COVID time, but made up for it by paying cash for a higher-end luxury car that they drive around a 20-mile radius of their beautiful home. I'm a little salty about this because my siblings and I were latchkey kids for most of our growing up years. From the time that I was 10, I would take care of my younger siblings, making sure everyone woke up, got on the bus, made it home, did homework, had something to eat, etc. We stayed home alone all summer because they couldn't afford camp for 4 kids. As we got older, we all had some combination of promiscuity, experimental drug or alcohol use, and anything else we could get away with, but they were checked out, only concerned with their careers. We all survived and have families of our own. They retired at a time they were making a combined 7-figure income and we were out of the home. So the past 2 decades, really even before retirement, of watching them throw money around on nothing of much substance, we figured there wouldn't be a whole bunch left for us. When all of our families gathered at their house to celebrate my niece's engagement, my dad made a comment about how they didn't believe in leaving anything behind because they worked hard for everything they have and we should all be doing the same. He added that their plan was to spend it before we die. He said this dramatically, as if he was expecting a big reaction. But I said, well, we expect nothing less of you. In a calm voice with a smile on my face. They were so pissed, even though I was essentially agreeing with them. My siblings and I had some gif and meme-filled text going between us for days after. Edit clarification, edit, and some answers and more details. 1. None of the kids feel entitled to our parents' money. We were all out of the house when they reached the place in their careers where they had it, so we never benefited from it other than we have a nice place to visit. 2. Neither of my parents came from money, but we did live with my dad's father for some time while my dad was getting training for what would become his career. 3. My parents do have a will, and the last I heard, I am the executor. My uncles, mom's side, are on the directives for medical decisions. If my uncles pass away before them, I'm next. 4. My parents are likely going to buy a new home, and that is part of a church-owned community where they live and own the home until they pass away. When that happens, the home goes to the church and they can then resell it. I think that's how it works. They have friends who are doing this, and because it's new, they can customize their home. We're all on board with this because there is also apartment-style places and long-term care as part of this community. They just need to not blow through their money so they can pay monthly service fee, which is pretty steep. Now, I think the father probably wanted some kind of reaction that he could, then look down upon and be like, well, we earned this money, and expected his children to have some form of entitlement. When, in reality, they already expected that of him. You took the wind out of his sails, and next thing you know, he's upset by it because he wanted his moment to shine. Honestly, the church community stuff is probably the biggest slap in the face in all of this. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a part of that community, but like the fact that their children don't have any equity in the home or any of that kind of stuff, and they're just giving it back to the church, and they still have to pay for an apparently steep long-term care as part of the community, that seems odd. If they're making 7 figures, they're building a 7-figure home in a church community, and the church community gets that home back and gets to resell it, and they still have a steep monthly service fee? Are they in a cult? This post is posted by Ethernum. Boomer father-in-law bankrupted his family in less than 3 months. Boomer's story. My boomer father-in-law not only lost all his family's money, but also went deep into debt in under 3 months. He first fell for a weird investment scheme. He invested 500 euros on some website that claimed to be able to multiply his investment in a few weeks. After watching some fake numbers on a fake website rise to astronomical heights, he decided to invest 50,000 euros, and then another 50,000 euros into it. When his investment had skyrocketed to a 7-figure number, he tried to withdraw it but found himself unable to do so. The investment company then contacted him and told him they would gladly send him his money, but since this was an international transfer, he needs to put forward 5,000 more euros to cover transfer fees and taxes, which he gladly did. A week after, they emailed him again and tried to tell him that his 5,000 euros did not cover the whole fee and that they needed more. Instead of sending more, he decided to put his foot down and demand they send him the money immediately. They called him back, telling him all they needed were his bank details, so he literally gave them his card numbers, his online login, and even gave them his 2-factor authentication code several times. Instead of giving him his millions, he got his savings and bank account drained into the deep, deep red. Literally as down will go. Now, since my father-in-law is the kind of boomer that likes to brag about how much credit he has available, this meant almost negative 50,000 euros. When he found himself unable to pay for anything, and his bank desperately calling him, he went to the bank manager who almost had a heart attack. He ended up going to the police to file a report, closed his account, got a new credit for the overdraft, and got a new, non-compromised account. He then emailed the scammers to demand his millions and threatened to sue them. 2 weeks later, some random guy called him out of the blue and claimed to be an international fraud investigator and offered to pursue his scammers and get his millions for him. All he needed for all that work was a fee of 3,000 euros, which my father-in-law gladly paid. The guy then mailed him demanding more money since the job unexpectedly turned out harder than anticipated. My father-in-law refused and demanded the investigator do the job he was already hired for. Said investigator then contacted him and said he'd managed to secure his millions. All he needed was his bank details. So, he literally, again, gave away his card numbers, online login, and 2-factor authentication codes for his new account to some random guy on the phone who was barely able to speak his language for the second time. And again, his bank account gets drained to like negative 5,000 euros. He literally went from having about 320,000 euros in his retirement fund to being in almost negative 50,000 euros in debt in about 3 months. So, where are we now? Well, the only reason he hasn't entered literal bankruptcy yet is because his wife has her finances completely separate from him and now has to fund their entire life while his monthly pension payments get almost completely garnished to pay off his debt. We also spoke to a lawyer and they told us that he is completely on the hook for all of the lost money and the accrued debt because there is no judge in this nation that would not consider him at the very least grossly negligent for what he did. And you know what? He still believes that his millions exist. Well, I'm actually not fully sure how I really feel about this one, because on one end of it, someone did get their entire life's work scammed out from under them, but there are a few factors here that kind of make it hard to fully pity. One, he made the same mistake twice. As a boomer who at one point bragged about the fact that he had a bunch of credit and, probably financial literacy, he should know that under no circumstance would any kind of financial entity that's legitimate would need this kind of information from you. From your login information, your card information, your two-factor authentication. I understand that there is a bit of an age gap when it comes to understanding what two-factor authentication is, but it happened twice. I would be really curious to see what everyone else's input is on this, because at one point, I understand the pain of this, and it's not fun being in a position like this at all, but at the same time, I have a hard time being fully sympathetic because of the gravitas of the mistake that was made twice. However, if it turns out that no one told him or explained to him the mistake that he made, which actually feels unlikely. It feels more likely that instead he just waved everyone off about it because at the end he still believes his millions are out there. So I really do wonder if he just refused to listen to the input of anyone around him. And that's why the mistake was made twice. The lead paint, I know better than you because I have more experience in life than you. Stare. This one's brought to us by BriefBend8605. My boomer dad is pissed that I won't give him my baby's social security number. Boomer freakout. That's right, my dad thinks I should just give him my kid's social security number like it's no big deal. He wants to start a bank account for my little guy. Sounds harmless, but my parents suck at taking care of their finances. They've been bankrupt at least once and bailed out every few years by my grandparents while they were still living. When I moved out at 20, I found out they had overdue utility bills in my name, so I couldn't open up any accounts for my first apartment until I paid it off for them. They took money from me as a minor while I was working at my first job and emptied $1,500 from my savings account. Never paid it back to this day. I don't trust them at all. Parents have been hounding my hubby and I for weeks, if not months, and we've been politely dodging it. My parents started getting pissy. I politely told my dad and parents that baby already has a savings account and they can contribute to that if they'd like. Boy, did they flip the fuck out. Demands baby's social security number and starts calling us names. I flat out say no at this point. I tell them they didn't need a social security number to open a savings account in which baby is beneficiary. They counter that they do. They then proceed to tell me that my baby won't receive any money from them until they get it. Don't care. Pretty sure they don't have shit anyways besides the inheritance money after my grandparents died that they are quite literally smoking through. My dad even had my grandpa change his will less than 6 months before his death and showing signs of dementia. My grandpa, right before he died, asked me what my dad made him sign and showed me the new will, asking me to translate it. It was leaving us, the grandkids, out, and dad was the sole proprietor, the executor, and power of attorney. Everything was changed. No point in contesting it. Hubby and I want to cut ties and move far, far away anyhow. We could not care less over 10 or 15K. Just more ways they abuse money in positions of power. I called one of the top 5 nationwide banks in the US, and they say you don't. In regards to requiring the baby's social security number, they tried to corner my husband behind my back and he didn't budge either. The anger continues. Snide comments at every holiday so far, and baby's birthday is coming up. I don't care. My idiot brother dolled out his kid's social security number without consent from his wife or even thinking about it. My parents say, I don't trust them. Yeah. No shit. Someone with good intentions doesn't get this angry. Edit? Wow, I was not expecting this much traction on my boomer dad vent. Thank you for the comments, support, and overall encouragement to stay strong and tell them to fuck off. Reading many of your stories and how so many of you can relate or have credit ruined by family has certainly cemented my plans to protect my kids' social security numbers at all costs. I'm sorry for those that have been permanently affected by identity and financial fraud by a close family member. I can't reply to all of you, but my heart and sympathies are in your corner. Fuck those assholes for what they have done to you guys. For those wondering why I still have contact with my family, it is very limited contact. Almost no contact, to be honest. We don't live that close and they don't have active roles in our lives. We see them maybe 6 times a year at large family functions and holidays that are unavoidable. There are plenty of buffers, and they typically behave around extended family. For those questioning me on my lack of spine, dealing with a narcissist is like talking to a brick wall. I have been no contact before, and I have stated we would do it again, no problem. I have a spine. I did say no. I was politely blowing them off and changing the subject, hoping they would get the fucking hint so I could avoid the impending drama. Once they became aggressive with us, I did tell them we don't trust them. Sorry I did not detail that enough apparently. They don't have the SSN, nor will they ever. They can bring it up all they want. I don't give a fuck. We barely see them, and this keeps them in an at-bay zone that we can control. If we cut them out completely, they would go nuts. Try and go for grandparents' rights and all that kind of other bullshit drama that I don't want to fucking deal with, while also dragging our whole extended family in as well. Keeping them on a carrot and stick relationship and letting them think they have any control when they don't works for us. As for my nephew, he is a few months older than my kiddo, born in the same year. I have discussed my concerns, and that's all I can do. It is their choice what to do next. I hope they freeze and monitor. My kid's SSN has been safely tucked away since it came in the mail and not available at all. I will lock his number until he's 18 after we set up a Roth and a 529 we have already planned. Thank you for all the support, and I bid you good night. This is actually a really good one to have here, because if you're a parent and your parents are asking for your child's social security number, do not under any circumstance give it to anyone else, because thing is anyone who has that child's social security number can open up accounts and other just random bullshit in it, even though they're an infant. They can pretty much put mountains upon mountains of credit debt on an infant and leave it with them to deal with. It's a pretty fucked up way of doing it, but it's a really common form of financial abuse within families. Keep your credit on lock and do not let other people use you for your credit, even if they claim to have the best of intentions. Trolling for funsies. All of my boomer neighbors assume I do nothing since I work from home. Boomer story. I recently moved into a new neighborhood, and the neighbors on 3 sides are retired and of boomer age. They are generally nice people and helpful, but also incredibly presumptuous and assuming. The one commonality between all of them is that they assume that, since I work from home, I do literally nothing all day. One of them frequently cracks jokes about how I'm able to do whatever I want during my workday. The other day, he called to ask a question, and I happened to be able to shift my schedule to work later in the day so I could chat for 30 minutes. Note, I ended up working late because of this, and of course, now he assumes that since I can chat for 30 minutes whenever I want, that I just don't do anything at all during my workday. The same neighbor also always talks about how the guy who lived here before us was constantly working around the yard, and they don't see me outside nearly as often. Well, newsflash boomers, I'm working 2 jobs, my wife works an additional job, and I'm trying to take on a 3rd side project. We effectively work 4 jobs between 2 people, while raising 3 teenagers. The folks who lived here before us? Retired guy and his wife, who never had a job. I wonder why they had the time to just wander around the yard all day. Every day, for that matter. Another neighbor calls me yesterday to tell me something, and he first asks if he woke me up. It's 9 a.m. I tell him that I've been up and working since around 5:15 a.m., and he quickly changes the topic. The same neighbor also assumed that we were rich kids from out of state and had our house gifted to us, when, in reality, we spent almost 20 years in a shoebox on the other side of town saving up to be able to move to our dream home. But you know, kids are lazy and entitled and don't want to work these days. Where we lived before, we were mostly in a low-income housing neighborhood with other folks around our age, so we never really encountered this. But these retired boomers, man, every assumption they make about us is just wrong. Most of my neighbors are thankfully Gen X, which makes it a lot easier and they kind of understand the concept of working from home. I do have one boomer neighbor, but thankfully I assume the other people around us have already had the conversation. But because my work schedule is hell, and because now I'm running 2 channels, recently I've been working nearly 10 to 14 hours a day, and I do wonder what my neighbors think, seeing the lights on at midnight and then off during the day because I'm currently a full night owl. Hell, to really think about it, they don't really see me at all, so they probably just think I'm some kind of antisocial hermit. Big booing on. Boomer mother-in-law posted a Facebook status about my husband, blocking him from seeing it, but not me, his wife. So I showed him. Social media. Mother-in-law posted a dramatic status about how her son never texts her and how she just has to accept this sad reality. At the end of her status, she put a, "Don't worry, he can't see this post," and a bunch of other boomer friends were commiserating with her, saying they're praying for her or offered her bad advice. Come on, you can't just tease the bad advice and not give me what it is. And of course, she neglected to hide the status from her daughter-in-law, me. So I screenshotted it and immediately sent it to him. For any lurking boomer parents, if your adult kids don't want to talk to you, it's almost certainly your fault. There are expectations, but if they don't like you and you can't for the life of you figure out why, then it's definitely your fault. You have a blind spot, and causing a whole scene over not being liked makes it worse. Edit, more context for all the triggered parents in the comments. He talks to her about once a week, and a mere few days before she posted this, he had invited her to get lunch with him, and she gave a wishy-washy no. He just doesn't text her back every time, and he doesn't answer spontaneous phone calls, hence her post. So I shared the post with him because his mom thought she could get away with trashing him on Facebook without him knowing about it. Man, that's not right. Also, if you are a boomer parent and you're wondering why your child never texts you, just ask them before ranting like this, because I'm going to be honest, because of my work schedule and the fact that I exist only at night, my parents sometimes don't hear from me for a couple weeks. So that is 100% on me. But my dad every now and then just texts to make sure I'm okay, and then I give him a call, we talk for like an hour or two, and then I go on with my day. But sometimes it just genuinely is the fact that they're just busy and bad with time and don't realize how many weeks have passed since the last time they talked with you. Just give them a text, ask if there's a time you can call, and during that call, just check in with them and make sure everything's good. I guarantee you they're not, most of the time, they're probably not purposely avoiding you. Unless, of course, you are the kind of parent to then go on Facebook and just start bashing them for, that. Then perhaps there is more to it. This one's brought to us by whatever the hell this username is. I finally found the reason why boomers hate texting. Boomer story. My dad and I were making plans to do something for my sister's graduation. I texted him where we can sit down and discuss the specifics later that evening, and I will be at his house after work around 6. Between 4:30 and 5:30, I received 5 calls every 10 minutes or so, asking why I made a commitment to meet at 4 and never showed up, and to not bother showing up anymore, and that he would do all the planning himself. I finally showed up to his house at 6 o'clock and showed him the text messages, which he replied okay to, that we agreed to 6. His response? This is why I hate texting. When everything is clear and documented, there's no point in trying to argue who's wrong or who's right. I told him that with the truth being documented, that there is no point in arguing because it's evidently clear who is right and who is wrong. He responded with telling me to get out of his face and go home. As a personal recommendation to those of you who have parents or older parents, every time you have a phone call where you make plans with them, make sure you text them afterwards. A list, almost like an itinerary basically, of any plans that you made and what the plans are so they can't pull a good old switcheroo and guilt trip you or gaslight you into believing something else was discussed. This one's brought to us by Derek the Cat Guy. You're 5 minutes early? How dare you? Boomer story. This happened a few years ago when I was a driver for a national pizza chain. This woman calls around 2:30 p.m. She explains to the manager she's having a Bible study at her house at 3:30 and wants a pizza exactly at that time. My manager explains that we can't guarantee exact times, but we can be there within a 10-minute window on either side. The woman supposedly agrees and we take the order. Now, it turns out she's not actually in our delivery area, but slightly outside. Normally, we would have said no, but she was a little old lady without a car and we were slow, so the manager asked if I would do it. I looked up the address, saw it was only a quarter mile out of the area, so I said okay. If anything, the tip would cover the gas. So we take the order, the manager explains the 3:30 situation, and we agree we'll make the order. Literally one large thin pizza, double cut, which should have been a red flag for me, at 3. So it'll be ready around 3:10, and I'll be at the house around 3:25, 3:30. Perfect! Everything works out great. No traffic, every light is green, and I get to the door right at 3:25. Then, this 60-something-year-old blue-haired biddy opens the door and scowls at me. Hello, ma'am, I have your pizza right here. Why are you here? Me looks at delivery slip to ensure I have the right address. I apologize, ma'am, is this not the address? It is, but you're supposed to be here at 3:30. Why are you here? I smile and explain the 10-minute window and how I tried to be as close to 3:30 as possible. She goes on a tirade about how she has to reheat the pizza because I'm so early and this is the worst customer service she's ever experienced. At this point, I apologize and ask if she would still like the pizza. She harumphs, grabs the exact change from the hall table, hands it to me with a scowl that would shame the devil, and I give her the pizza. When I get back to the store, the manager is hanging up the phone. The customer called back to the store right after I left and read the manager about large rude driver, i.e. me, who arrived too early and so the pizza was cold when her guests arrived for Bible study, who were pulling up as I left. When the manager refused to give her credit and informed her she was not to be delivered to again for apparently calling me rude names over the phone and bragging about not tipping, the woman got irate, demanding corporate's number. At this point, my manager was fed up and told her to look it up on the website herself. So, moral of the story, even if you go out of your way, do a favor for, and offer prompt service for boomers, they will still complain, and they won't tip. One thing that always gets me about these videos is there's a common thread about just people being in the boomer age range, just being entitled assholes. And every time I make one of these videos, I always get one person who's like, "You're being ageist with this video!" And it's like, are you the same kind of people who just constantly rag on our generation nonstop, and the moment we bite back even just a little bit, you go on a tirade about us being ageist? Is that what it is? And to think they call us the snowflakes. Not a smurf, I promise. Probably the greatest reaction to an entitled boomer I've seen in years. Boomer story. I was at Kroger yesterday buying groceries. There were only 2 checkout lanes open and it was around 5 p.m.-ish, so the afternoon rush was in full swing. Both lines were about 8 to 10 people long. I was in line for one checkout lane and some mid-30s guy was in the checkout lane next to me. He was the last one in his line. I was the second to last in my line. A woman got in line behind him, who looked to be about 70. You know, sometimes when you meet someone, you just get a sense that they're kind of an asshole? Yeah, she was one of those types. She pushed her cart up behind him, made a few comments that we all ignored about not having enough open registers, and we'll be here all day at this rate. Some time passes and we're all shuffling forward as the line moves up. The guy who's in front of the older woman is now next in line for his lane once the person in front of him finishes. Then, she started her bullshit. I hear the woman say to the man, "Excuse me, I'm in a big hurry. Would it be alright if I just went in front of you?" While she was saying this, she moved her cart up alongside his, grabbed the front of his cart, and began to push his cart out of the way so she could get in front of him. The guy looks at her without saying anything, grabs the handle of his cart so that she can't push it any further to the side, and takes a step forward so the front half of his cart is now between the 2 drink coolers on either side of the lane so her cart can't fit alongside his. He then goes back to looking straight ahead without saying a word. The woman began to boom her. She started loudly demanding that he let her go in front of him because she has more stuff and has to get it home. Starts complaining that he's disrespectful and tells him, "It's ladies first, but please go right ahead," and so on and so on. She had the attitude of a woman who had rarely, if ever, been told no in her life and was handling it about as well as you'd expect. The guy, once again, didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his AirPod case, and put both of his AirPods into his ears. Then he took out his phone and, very slowly and deliberately, slid the volume bar on his screen to the maximum. Then he went back to staring straight ahead without saying a word. The boomer bitched at him for another minute or two until she finally noticed that he couldn't hear her. Then went back to snarkily making comments at his back while the guy's stuff was rung up. The guy paid for his stuff and left without ever glancing at her. She was absolutely seething the entire time. That guy was my hero. Never even tried to argue with her, just shut her down and went about his day. I never would have thought that ignoring them was an option, but this changes everything. Now, normally I'm more a fan of just returning the energy back to them or just simply using their logic and cranking it up a couple notches so they realize their own inconsistencies, but this is fun. Brian Ching, 25. Boomer mother-in-law demands I don't go out to eat so we can save for her retirement. Boomer story. My boomer mother-in-law, female 59, is always complaining that I need to save money. At the first few years of my relationship with my wife, I thought she was just trying to look out for me. But recently, she let it slip at the dinner table today. My father-in-law burned the chicken drumsticks on the grill to the point where they weren't edible. When I suggested getting pizza from Little Caesars or Domino's, she slipped and said, "No, Brian, save your money. We have no 401k and you need to save." My mother-in-law married my father-in-law not because of his looks, he is obese, but he makes 6 figures, so I guess that was her draw to him. However, he admitted to me that he hadn't saved shit for retirement and he still owed a lot of back child support from a prior marriage. Their plan was originally to retire in Argentina, where they are originally from. However, inflation there is wild and quality of living is going down, unfortunately. So, now their plan is to live off of me, I guess. Fuck my life. It has been a long time since I've seen an FML conclude a post. But I don't blame him in the slightest, because that is not fun at all to find out the reason why your parents-in-law are essentially so gung-ho on you saving money is not for yourself or your future, but for their future. Now, in full honesty, I want to be in the position in life where I can support my parents in their retirement and help them with their future. But what gets me is the entitlement behind it, the belief that because they did not save during their life, something that they push their own children to do, that they should be entitled to the earnings and savings of, well, I mean, in this case, their son-in-law. This one's brought to us by Empty Ambition 9050. Boomer Dad can't figure out why I don't just buy a home. Boomer story. I showed him my income and we did the math. After rent, car, groceries, and insurance, I have $0 left over. You should get a second job. I already have 2. You're a fool for paying rent. Just buy a house. Okay. I think this is where we started, Dad. Then he goes into, right out of college I was struggling, so I got an apartment for $150 a month, but I only made $800 a month. So your rent was 1/5 your income. That would be like me finding an apartment for $500. Well, rent is a lot cheaper than that, so you should be fine. I showed him the exact apartment he had for $150, which is now $2,400. You need to get another job. I told you, I have 2. And you should get a good union job at a factory like I did. Work hard. Those don't exist anymore. Actually, they don't exist anymore because of your generation. If you want a depressing rabbit hole to go down, just Google the wealth gap between boomers and any generation before and after them. The boomer generation had the peak of finances, and for some reason, after their generation, the quality of standard of living has consistently been decreasing when it comes to the average income and wealth that their children have. And it's not because there's a generational plague of laziness. Millennials have the highest education of any generation. Gen Z, we're still missing data on because some of them are still in primary education. But millennials, highest education. Yet the average millennial earner earns 25 to 30% less than their boomer parents did at the same age. And this is with adjustment for inflation. This one's brought to us by LayFood10, or is it LaFood10? Boomers angry, I gave them good news, a boomer's story. This happened a couple of years ago, but I'm still confused by it. My parents and their siblings, all boomers, went nuts with MAGA and Fox News. They also got my grandma into it. My mom was staying with my grandma when someone told them that Antifa was going door to door killing rich people. Obviously, they believed it and were hiding in the house and trying to find weapons. They kept sending messages about how scared they were. This didn't sound real, so I went online and checked it out. Apparently, a neo-Nazi group had posted this to scare people, so I did the reasonable thing and contacted them with proof that it was a hoax, so they could stop being afraid. A few minutes later, I get a call from my father who was furious. He yelled at me for not being supportive of their feelings. My parents, aunts, and uncles all stopped talking to me for months over this. Apparently, I was supposed to feed into their delusion. Who in the world gets angry when you try to take away their fears? I've started to get the feeling that people just enjoy being scared and afraid of something and, get angry when they find out that they no longer have something to be scared and afraid of. Like, when you think of how insane this is, it really boils down to, how dare you not tell your grandmother that Antifa isn't gonna kill her? That's what that comes down to. It's insane. It's like they thrive off of just anger, hatred, and fear. Pressed for privacy. Boomers can't understand boundaries. Boomer story. I recently moved into a nice house with a good-sized yard, just a little shy of an acre, in a nice, central location in my town. The area looked amazing, didn't have an HOA, no red flags at all. Then, after living here for about 4 months, I realized 2 things. 1. I'm surrounded on all sides, neighbor on either side and backyard, by retired boomers who apparently need to walk into my yard and strike up a conversation with me anytime they so much as see my open back door. Or worse, see me at my kitchen window washing dishes or whatever. There was one incident where I had invited my family over for a get-together, small fire in my backyard, and these boomers invited themselves into my backyard and chatted and helped themselves to the s'mores materials off of my outside table while I had went inside to use the bathroom. My family did not invite them and had said several times, this is just a family night. Just zero boundaries at all on these guys. It's unreal. 2. The neighbors all have dogs, but apparently no fences and just let them free roam, which is problematic for so many reasons in our area of town. Again, pretty central. I'm like 4 houses away from a major, for our city, road. And the fact that the dogs come and bother my dog, who I had leashed to a stake when he needed to go out. Sometimes the boomers even bring the dogs to my yard if they catch me bringing my dog out, which pretty much just means that I have to bring my dog back in because their dogs don't play nice. Some of them complain that I'm babying my dog too much and just let the dogs be dogs. So I decided I could kill a few birds with one stone and put up a nice 6-foot-tall privacy fence, keep the dogs and the boomers out, and keep my dog in and give him a lot more roaming space than he had with his leash on a stake. With the slope of the ground in the neighborhood and all but one house being 1 floor, only one neighbor a few houses away, who also seemed cool and I still have had no issues, and I think only one conversation with a 2-story home would be able to see into my backyard, or my kitchen window, without physically entering my backyard. Fence went up a little over 2 weeks ago, and I thought that would be the end of all of my problems. I put up a couple of signs on the gates, the typical keep gate shut, dog in yard sign, and no trespassing please sign. Very visible and very close to the latch. My God, could I not have been more wrong? The second day I had the fence up, I was grilling a few burgers out with my dog, thinking I was finally going to have the perfect home, and one of them opened my gate and walked into my yard while saying, "Thought I was smelling something good. How you been?" Then sat down in a chair while I was a little stunned and said, "Haven't seen you much too lately," with a chuckle like he was trying to be funny. Didn't realize he had left the gate open until my dog locked eyes with me from across the yard, then bolted for the gate. Thankfully, didn't get far. I tore into the guy and he said I shouldn't be bothered by neighbors being neighborly or dogs being dogs. I made it very clear that if I wanted him in my backyard, that he'd actually know instead of just assume. He obviously got uncomfortable and I haven't seen him since, thankfully. But that's only one of them. Hoping it was a one-off occurrence, I opted to not put locks on my gate because surely someone being that oblivious to social norms was a one-off thing, right? Anyway, I figured I would give my dog more time in the yard and set him up with a nice doghouse and give him some messy treats, peanut butter licks, sauced bones, or crumbly things, to enjoy in the nice weather. He was loving it for the 10 minutes I was sitting with him. Went to do some laundry and make a few calls, and about an hour later I hear something barking and then him whimpering in the backyard. One of the neighbors thought they'd let their dog into my backyard to play, and their dog had snipped at my dog and took his treats away from him. Oh boy, was I about ready to get my crowbar, but I decided it would be better for everyone involved if I just grabbed the dog and staked it in that neighbor's front yard because they were apparently also gone by the time I grabbed the dog. I put locks on the gate, left my dog outside now that I have a locked gate while I ran to the store. Came back to a boomer trying to figure out the lock and had a nice long chat about reading comprehension. Doorbell rang this morning, prompting this post. The neighbors had an intervention on my porch about how I should be more welcoming to them and take my fence down so the dogs could play. I told them I didn't want their dogs anywhere near my dog, and while I'm sure they're all great people, I really want my space to be my space. They just couldn't comprehend, and I eventually shut the door on them. I can't believe I moved here and want to sell now. As fucking nuclear as it is, this is what TROs are for. This is the actual honest-God reason for TROs. You can actually specify in the TRO that they are not to go onto your property without your permission. And the only reason why I'm suggesting something so goddamn extreme is because of the stuff involving the dog. If my neighbor had opened my fence and my dog got out and they got lost because they decided to open my gate, I don't know what I would do. God forbid, because they're in a busy area, if the dog bolted, got through the fence, then got hit by a car. And I just fucking know the response would be, "Oh, it's just dogs being dogs, you know, just get a new one." If you don't want to opt for a restraining order, get yourself an actual honest-to-God, like, extremely complicated lock. Go to Lockpicking Lawyer's channel. If the lock has a video that's any longer than 5 minutes, you know it's a certified lock. Forever banned. PT5. Boomer's actions has consequences. Boomer's story. Well, Boomer's actions from this afternoon had consequences that came at night. As shown in the picture above, which ironically it's actually posted below, I live in an apartment complex with assigned parking spaces, and everyone not in the proper parking spaces or do not have a pass is subjected to towing at the owner's expense. This afternoon, around 2 p.m., a Boomer couple parked in the spot next to me, signified by the blue arrow. Seeing this and being nice, I let them know that they can't park there because that's someone else's parking spot, even though it's been vacant for almost 2 years, and that the vehicle will be subject to towing. I inform them that they can park in the guest parking, signified by the orange line, and text the number on the sign, signified by the red arrow, and enter your license plate number and you'll be given a 24-hour pass. But the Boomer couple, being adamant that they'll only be a couple of minutes and will be gone soon, they went about their business. Now, at 11 p.m., the Boomer's vehicle has been towed. So Boomers are going to have a good surprise in the morning. They probably thought that he was part of the apartment complex staff and was like, "Oh, let's just lie to him and tell him that we'll just be back soon, so that way he gets off our case." When it's just a resident telling them like, "Hey, if you don't want to get towed, just follow the instructions on the signs labeled around the parking complex." And, well, oh, to be a fly on the wall when they wake up in the morning and see that parking spot empty. Apparently down below, the OP did actually try to update everyone, but throughout the day, literally nothing exciting happened. They gave like an update by hour, and literally nothing happened. So my guess would be is they walked outside, got flustered and embarrassed, probably went on the inside of the building to complain, and then were told and instructed that, you should have read the signs, scattered throughout the complex. My guess would have also been that if they parked in guest parking, they probably would have been more lenient with the towing, just because in this specific instance, they parked in a resident parking spot, which caused them to get towed. That's what my guess is and why it happened so quickly. There's probably also the fact that someone in the apartment complex is a snitch. Was it you, OP? Did you snitch on them? Sinai Gusame, I think I said that right. Boomer coworker is threatening to sue for free gas because I'm getting free electricity at my workplace. Boomer story. My coworker, mid-60s male, drives a huge truck. I recently took the plunge and got a mini electric SUV. Ever since he calls me the fridge driver, which is kind of funny, sure, I'll give him that, but once I forgot to charge at home and arrived at work with 22% battery. I noticed a 220-volt outlet very close to my parking spot, so I took the charger to see if it was connected, and it worked. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I emailed the facilities team asking for permission. They pretty much said, "We don't care, don't email us anymore." My parking spot was very close to the entrance, and my Boomer friend, let's call him Jack, uses a cane and parks at the very end of the garage. I switched spots with him, and he's been very nice to me ever since. This comes back later. I charge my car twice a week on average. So I've been getting free mobility for about 6 months. Another coworker got an F-150 Lightning, and I was telling her over lunch that she could use my parking spot on the days that I'm not there. I only go to the office twice a week. Our Boomer friend was there too. I went to show her where the outlet was, and Jack decided to tag along. The whole time he was like, "Hey, this used to be my parking spot." My friend was low on battery and my car was already full, so we switched right there. Jack was making jokes that she drives a more manly car than I do. He asked questions about how much money we were saving. I said about $80 a week. My coworker said that she used to spend about $100 a week, and that this will be a life changer. What followed is the weirdest man-child behavior I've seen. He emailed pictures of both cars charging to my supervisor, asking if this was allowed. I was contacted and showed my supervisor the email from the facilities team. He asked for his spot back. My manager checked with me if it was okay sharing the spot so Jack could charge his car. I told him he drives a Dodge Ram. It's not electric. He proceeded to ask for a $5,000 a year gift card to a gas station so he could commute to work for free. He filed a complaint with HR stating he's been discriminated against for being old and refuses to adopt a woke liberal mentality. He goes daily to take pictures of whichever car is charging in the spot. He stopped talking to us altogether, not even a good morning. He threatened to sue the company after HR rejected his claim. Update, $80 and $100 is what we used to spend with a gas car. On EV at home charging, it's like $10 to maybe $15 a week. If the building's large enough, they probably don't even notice the additional like $10 to $15 a week that's being dropped on, each electric car in the parking lot. However, they would notice if they suddenly had to give $5,000 a year to every gas car in the parking lot. That is ridiculous. Bro is probably gobsmacked that a woke liberal mentality is actually saving money compared to what he's told about the tales of avocado toast. Extra marsupial, 1682. And you have extra marsupials. Boomer couldn't comprehend that my husband is Asian, even though I'm Asian. My husband and I went to stay with my parents for a couple of days. They moved to a suburb with mostly older people when I left for college, so I don't know any of their neighbors. My husband and I are both Asian. Walking around the neighborhood with my husband, I noticed that there were many white male boomers married to Asian women. They were generally nice, and we would smile or wave as we walked by. Uh-oh. The next day, I went out on my own, and one of the white boomers in his 60s came to introduce himself. He told me his name and his wife's name, which I recognized as Vietnamese. That's what I thought was going to happen. I remember from the day before that she looked 20 years younger than him and was still thin, whereas he was really overweight. He then asked, "How are you and your brother doing back home?" I told him that he was my husband and thought to myself that it was weird that he assumed he was my brother. We both wear wedding rings, have different skin color, and look nothing alike, and we walk closely side by side. He said, "Oh, okay," in a confused manner. I saw him again the next day and he approached me and said, "Hey, how's your husband?" with a strange, almost mocking emphasis on husband. "Sorry about the confusion, it's just that he looks like your brother. He's a lucky guy." I said, "Okay," and just walked off. Creepy vibes aside, once again, we look nothing alike. I'm short, thin, pale skin, and he is dark, tall, and muscular. It was such a weird experience realizing that there are these white entitled boomers who feel they are entitled to be with all the Asian women in the world just because he and his neighbors have Asian wives. His wife is probably a Vietnamese refugee from the war, timeline and poor English speaking ability match. And now, this overweight boomer feels like he's some Prince Charming who all Asian women can't resist. There was a, let's just say, trend of American soldiers bringing home Vietnamese wives after the Vietnam War. This was, not a widespread trend, but it was enough to become on a lot of people's radars. And that's why I said, because, I knew exactly where it was going to go. That's all I can say. It's what Boomer thinks it's okay to touch my child, and doubles down. Today, my 2-year-old son and I were waiting for our order at Costco's food court. He was sitting in the child seat of my cart, leaning over, hugging a balloon. Enter Boomer Lady. She comes over and begins touching his back and trying to talk to him. Immediately, I sternly told her, "Excuse me, please don't touch my child." She seemed taken aback and mentioned he reminded her of her granddaughter. I reiterated, "Okay, but it's not okay to touch someone's child. Please don't touch him. I'm very protective." We collected our food and sat down. A little while later, the woman approached us again. She said, "I'm sorry for touching your child, but I don't know what country you're from. You didn't need to be so rude to me." I was ready to accept her apology, but nope, she doubled down and added xenophobia to it. I snapped back at her and said, "I don't know what country you're from, where you think it's okay to touch someone's child." I'm from here, she said, indignant that I could assume otherwise. "Well, you still shouldn't have touched someone's child," I responded again. With the most boomer of retorts, she spat out, "You're stupid," and started storming away. Something in me had to have the last word, so I shouted after her, "I was polite. I said excuse me, and please don't touch my child." She again threw another, "You're stupid," over her shoulder as she stomped off. Thankfully, some other boomers sitting nearby were polite and started chatting with me and asked what happened. When I told them, they, thankfully, backed me up, agreeing that it was inappropriate behavior from her. I hope she goes home and bitches about me to her boomer friends, and they also put her in her place. See, it sucks because there's not a lot of stories on the subreddit where boomers are being polite and they're actually being good humans. I like those ones, but they're so few and far and in between because oftentimes the boomers who are actually regular human beings who you would want to sit down and have a coffee with are overshadowed by the ones who would rather touch and finagle your children because they have a mild resemblance to their granddaughter. Also, gotta love the lead paint age regression being on full display here with the toddler temper tantrum of "You're stupid" being thrown out as they scamper away. But I really do wish there were more stories of just boomers being actual human beings, because normally they're pretty fucking chill. But as we all know, the squeakiest wheel gets the most oil. Big Daddy Cool Diesel. Boomers in our family refuse to accept my kid's diet. Boomer's story. This one is relatively mild but still infuriating. By the grace of God, my son and daughter don't enjoy sweets. Their preferred drink is water and they really like fruit. We didn't force this, but we have absolutely doubled down on it. The average kid's diet is usually so bad, so we lucked into this. Now, don't get me wrong, it's almost tradition that grandparents get to bend the rules a little bit. A little ice cream or a later bedtime. That's part of the fun. But the fucking boomers in my life think it's a constitutional right to eat crap and that we are somehow depriving our kids. Never mind the fact that the boomers gifted America its obesity epidemic. Popping in for a visit brings a pack of Oreos. Kids sleep over, breakfast was Pop-Tarts and a milkshake. The tipping point happened the other day when they insisted my son learn to like Coca-Cola. He gagged on it, and they kept pushing like a dealer. Again, we aren't nutritionists, maybe we should be, but instead of saying, your kids don't like sweets, wow, lucky you, the boomers in our lives feel it's somehow abnormal behavior that needs to be corrected. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I don't get why they can just be cool with this. I don't think you're overreacting in the slightest. At the end of the day, the dietary preference does come down to the parents, and in your case, you are doing the perfect diet. This would be a different story if it was grandparents seeing their children giving their grandchildren just loads and loads and loads of sugar, and to the point where they were at risk of diabetes. This is the exact opposite. You have your grandparents trying to bestow the generational right of having type 2 diabetes, apparently. And the fact that your son has gagged on Coca-Cola and your parents are continuing to push it on them? That's gross. That's fucked up. Like, this is the exact opposite problem of a kid gagging on broccoli or just anything healthy. They literally do not like the crap. It's fine. Your kids are actually on track to living very healthy lives, and I hope to God you don't buckle or waver in any way. Shoeless Jody. Boomer is mad at me because I don't work at Staples. Boomer story. I was standing at the copier at Staples, sending out brochures from my phone to the copier. In the periphery, a person walked up to the workstation table next to a different copier and stood there. I'm scrolling through my Google Drive, getting everything I need, and the man cleared his throat. I glanced up and smiled politely. The old guy kind of glared at me, so I went back to my documents. I could feel him huffing to himself. Finally, he snaps, "Would you get off your damn phone and help me with this?" I look up and realize he's talking to me. I looked around and said, "Oh, me?" In a mocking tone, he said, "Yes, you, playing around during work hours." I respond, "Sorry, sir, I don't work here." "Then why are you behind that desk?" This table is for people to organize their papers on. I can probably still help you with the copier if you want." "Fine, I need 100. I walked over to his copier. He had a handwritten sign in ballpoint pen about a yard sale. I showed him how to place the paper. I asked him what type of paper he wanted to print on and to make sure that it was loaded. I used the chart to show him how much it would cost and then said that he just needs to swipe a credit card to get started. A little window popped up saying that there would be a $5 hold in the card for the print job. He was outraged. "How do I know if my money's coming back? I don't know what this machine is hooked up to. You could be making copies of my card and selling it to China." At this point, an actual Staples employee came over and tried to help, so I went back to my copier. There was no convincing him that it wasn't a scam. The guy ended up leaving without making any copies. It is a little telling that anyone doing any form of self-service work is immediately labeled as an employee by any kind of boomer. Honestly, I'm so unfazed by boomers at this point. And the part that actually has me the most, just genuinely caught off guard is the ballpoint written yard sale sign. Was it, shaded in with a ballpoint, or did he just, in single stroke write yard sale and wants to copy that? When he hangs that up, that's not gonna be visible from the street. You're gonna, just with the sunlight reflecting off the paper, and because it's going to be copied, there's not going to be any indentation to help it be more visible. It's just going to be kind of like a very vague... This sign's not going to work. It would have been less embarrassing for him to use Sharpie or, God forbid, papyrus. Lazy Growth, 5898. "You want to go home? Why? You only did CPR for 5 minutes. Boomer story. Newish friend coworker had a heart attack and died at work. Holy shit. Died at work the other day. We all heard a crash coming from his cubicle. A lady screamed. When I got over there, she was lying face down, barely breathing and all blue. A couple of us rolled him over, stretched him out, and checked his vitals. I was an EMT in another life. He had no heartbeat and was only reflexively breathing. Another lady called 911 and then ran down to the main level to direct the first responders. 2 of us worked on him for about 10 to 15 minutes before paramedics arrived. Fuck, it was horrible. The sounds he made, the ribs cracking, the blank stare. As soon as they wheeled him out of the building, they pronounced him dead somewhere else. My boomer boss, late 60s, goes, "All right, that's enough excitement, everyone. Let's get back at it." And with that, he clapped his hands once and scurried back to his office. I don't feel like doing any more sales calls for a minute, so I just sat on the office couch for a while, and after 5 minutes or so, he noticed I wasn't making my calls and came out to confront me. "Hey, perk up. No point in wallowing, is there? Let's get back to work." Man. He was my friend, and that was troubling. I'm gonna need a while. I might go home for the rest of the day. "For what? You're not tired, are you? You only had to do CPR for like barely 5 minutes. I just grabbed my keys and left. Fuck that guy. When I got back to work the next day, he goes, "I hope you aren't planning on acting out again today. I was this close to letting you go yesterday." If you are actively trained in CPR like a nurse would be and just have CPR certification, actively having to do 10 to 15 minutes of violent chest compressions is going to not only exhaust you, but actually fuck with your head, because as they described, you're gonna hear some really gross stuff as you're doing compressions. You're gonna hear the air gasping out of their chests every time that you essentially pump down. You're gonna end up hearing their ribs cracking, their eyes will stare at you, and you gotta pretty much deal with that shit, and it is haunting. When we did CPR stuff in high school, they played the sounds that you would hear, and the man needs a well-deserved break. Like, good God. The coil. I'm super proud that my dad breaks the boomer stereotype. Boomer story! My dad had the plumber over today. Same plumber they've been calling for years. They were chatting and things got to the topic of health. My dad has prostate cancer, he's doing very well, and it's super manageable at the moment. He asked the plumber if he had gotten to the doctor recently and gotten checked for anything because he's nearing 50 and could be at risk. Plumber told him he can't get checked because he doesn't have health insurance, and that he actually hasn't been to the doctor since he was a teenager, but he assured my dad he feels fine. Well, except he gets a splitting headache every night, but it's fine because he knows how to deal with it. So, what does my dad do? When he goes to pay the guy for the plumbing services, he also gives him a second check and says, "This is for you to go to the doctor with. It'll pay for the blood tests and whatever else they need to do. But you need to promise me you'll make the appointment and you tell me how it goes." The guy broke down crying. He couldn't even talk. He took the check and left. Called my dad a couple hours later, still crying, saying he made the appointment and that this was the nicest thing anyone has ever done for him in his entire life. I just wanted to share because it made me cry too. It kinda sucks that the story has depressing implications to it, but we finally got a story of a boomer being a good person. Thank God. I specifically went out of my way to seek one out because I'm so tired of them all just being so entitled. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSups. Use code ODDS at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code ODDS directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Pear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup. And you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code ODDS at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.